This battle right here is why I play Teutons. I love it, man. Look them do the work. I love this civilization. And now I unleash my Onager boulders filled with my Teutonic might, ending his pagan ways. Please subscribe. Now roll the intro. I love Age of Empires too. I enjoy the history of the Crusades. And I have watched all Ultimate Guide to 2K ELO from Hera. So let's take the Holy Land. This is Teutons to 2K ELO by Teutons. Into the first game, we are in an early feudal age situation, and I'm being drushed. He attacks my berries and forces my villagers back to my DC. After I protect my food villagers, he decides to pressure my wood line and forces more idle time in my eco. I make some scouts to repel his men at arms, and with some microm I'm able to kill one of his men at arms, and then I send the scout to kill his injured scout. But the drush is not quite finished, as he comes back to pressure my wood line, killing one of my villagers, but I also kill one of his men at arms. Then to finish off the job, I use one of my scouts to kill his remaining men at arms, ending the raid. After that, I was able to go into the Castle Age and amass some knights. Then I found his army without Castle Age upgrades and I decide to take the trade. Then I proceed to engage his archers with my knights and I abuse his lack of upgrades as he starts to fall back to find a more favorable position. Even though he gains a minor advantage in this movement, I still have better units, so I stick around for the trade. Even though he kills all my knights there, I still stop him from amassing his archers. As I know he's behind in archers, I decide to amass knights and lay siege to his palisade gate, but then his knights dive in to attempt to destroy my mangonel as his monks get one conversion off. I try to micro my mangonel forward so I can kill the monks, and I land a massive shot ending the poor monk's lives. Then he makes a major mistake in moving his knights back and letting me into his base. I managed to squeeze all my army in and proceed to slaughter his army and economy. He basically handed me the win there. After realizing his major mistake, he calls the GG. Jumping into the second game. It's a fortress game, so I skipped all of the early game and the booming, and now I'm catching some relics as I see his monk and kill it, and then I gather more relics. I slaughter him. I also catch him patrolling the relics with his own knight, but since I have way more knights, I easily win the skirmisher. Meanwhile, I'm sending the monk to capture the relic. After winning multiple mini skirmishers, I was able to capture 4 relics, but then he knocked on my door with some traps. It sent some knights to try to kill his traps, but then I see his massive elite custodier army. As I see my cavaliers are doomed, I decide to take the L and commit the cavaliers to the fight. After this, I'm feeling worried because I have not enough army to respond to his attacks. Although I committed all my cavaliers, they didn't go out without a fight and were able to kill more than I thought. After a while of sieging, he managed to get his custodier in, but I was able to amass some paladins to counter his attack. With the paladins and some of the monks I left behind, I was able to push back the custodiers. Instead of attacking the center, he decides to turn to the right. As he full commits his army into my paladins, I decide to take my rear paladins into his trap and destroy them. Thanks to my better micro, I was able to split his army in 2 and destroy them. Although I won the fight and successfully repelled his army, he managed to build up the castle. After the fight, there was a little bit of a lull state, and then I was able to build my own trebuchets and start the siege of his forward castle. We had another fight, but this time I had the numbers advantage and fully upgraded paladins. I also think hostiliers are not that good into Teutonic paladins because of the extra armor. Nevertheless, I plugged the hole in my base. While this is happening, I was able to trap down his castle. After his castle went down, I was able to take back the right side of the map. Then I finally take out his trap. Then I move forward my army to lay siege on his remainder castles, and there goes 1. 2. But when I was posturing to destroy his 3rd castle, he amassed some army, but I successfully into fully upgraded elite Teutonic knights. Look them do the work. I love this civilization. This battle right here is why I play Teutons. I love it, man. I want you guys to just watch it. Just listen to it. Music to my ears. After my KP boys put the trash out, my traps are able to take the castle down. And then the other one. After his final center castle went down, I was able to take the middle with little effort. After I opened the gate, I was able to crush his economy. Then I finally was able to attack the left side of the map and he calls the GG. Into the third game, I come in aggressively with the scout rush. My scouts were able to reach his base before he walled it off and kill one villager. I was feeling pretty confident since I had 3 scouts, but I wasn't expecting his second TC. He was making a human feudal age boom. Then I look instead to attack his woodline, but he walled off successfully. Then I look forward to his berries and managed to almost kill his villager, but it was too risky and I lost 1 scout. I shouldn't have chased that far. I come back with my injured scouts and decide to try to snipe his injured villager, which I do so. But then my scouts run into the other DC and die. Now in Castle Age I go for a double stable to mass some knights. I go forward to pressure his economy with my knights and destroy his gold economy. I see a lot of spearmen and since they are not upgraded, I decide to take the trade. This is a good trade for me because bonus they do to cavalry is virtually non-existent to Castle Age knights. I dominantly win the fight and continue to pressure his gold villagers. Since he's now making double counters to my knights in pikemen and camels, I decide to take it slow and siege instead of going the fights with my knights. In this clip I misposition my mangonel forward, forcing me to trade into the pikemen with my knights. Even though I win the skirmisher, my knights numbers take a hit, but I still decide to put the pressure forward and attack his town center with my mangonel. After his continuous pikemen production, I decide to fall back since my knights are starting to lag. And since my economy is not so great, I decide to make a monk to heal my remainder knights. And now his production of pikemen is starting to overwhelm my knights. Although I keep winning the skirmishers, it's not good for me long term. And as you can see, I'm starting to lose numbers and one of my mangonel. This is starting to look bad for me and I fall back. He has now gained control of the middle area and I build a castle to hold. This castle buys me enough time so I can make a gross amount of knights as I decide to break into his base and destroy his economy instead of taking a bad fight into his pikemen. I move into his main TC to try to stop his Imperial Age upgrade, but I arrived slightly late. But since he successfully went to the Imperial Age, I decide to take the trade before he can make halberdiers. Then I win the fight and do some raid into his economy. But then I see something odd. Oh no, not the step lancers please. That's right, he was making step lancers. And then I began to raid his side economy with my paladins. After having too much pressure, he decides to call the GG. GG. This fourth and final game, I prepare a scout rush while he decides to do a cheeky entrance to my base. Since he has a considerable amount of scouts, I decide to use my own scouts in a defensive manner. Because if I'm able to defend successfully my villagers without too much idle time or too many casualties, he has invested so much food that it will be worth it even if I don't attack him. I make some awkward trades to keep my economy running. To protect my wood economy, I actively build some houses and send my food villagers to the TC. After then I have somewhat stabilized the situation in my economy, I decide to send my scouts forward. After being stopped at the woodlines, he decides to raid my gold and kills one villager. But I was also able to plug the hole in my wall and defend the attack with my villagers and my pikemen. At this point, his scouts are so low that they pose no threat to my angry villager mob. Look at them go stabby stabby on their horses. In the meantime, my scouts are raiding his economy. And at the end of the day, I was able to push back successfully his scouts, with some minor casualties. Now that I am in Castle Age, I amass a considerable amount of knights and send them to the enemy TC, but I decide against it since he has some archer units. Instead of chasing his cavalry archer, I decide to raid his economy, thinking I could cause more damage in that department. Reflecting back on that decision, I think I was wrong because he was able to amass a considerable amount of cavalry archers. Nevertheless, I was still able to deal a great amount of damage to his economy. I was able to hit Imperial Age first, but he still had the military advantage and decided to press on onto my economy. Trying to avoid this, I chase him with my cavaliers. He goes to my woodland and I decide to pull a masterpiece that Viper will be proud of. Kinda. I was able to trap all of his army in that square while receiving castle fire, but I delete the houses for some reason and runs out, with great casualties though. Fearing he will have a secondary army, I do not chase. He decides to loop around with his army for a round 2 of the raid. This time I decide to defend with some scorpions. In the meantime, I'm raiding his economy with my own horsemen. I even managed to take his TC out, but looking back at my base, things are not looking so good either. With my scorpions now in position, I start the skirmisher and they get absolutely smashed because they are not the right unit to go against cavalry archers. And I will never do so again. I injure most of them, but it's not enough. Definitely a waste of resources. But back at his base, I continue the pressure and I am free to attack his economy as I please. This northern threat forces him to pull his army from my base to his, effectively ending his raid and putting myself first in the score. But now my defenses are fully online. Even though he's sieging me, I feel pretty confident because my army is made of onagers. And now I unleash my onager boulders filled with my Teutonic might, ending his pagan ways. Look at those infidels fall like flies. All my siege force is at full display right now. His army is undone and my economy is better. Basically, when this castle goes down, the game is over. As I move in my mighty Crusader paladins, he calls it GG. Today's video was a pretty good run and I got a winning streak that landed me almost 1400 ELO. Thanks for watching the video and